boss man?
That much, son. How you doing?
Good.
You sure?
Yep. Nope, you can change. Why don't you sit on this one? Why don't you sit over here and boot George will call you out of their seat. When they get here, they won't know what to do. Hey, if you did that, they'll think you've lost your mind. Claudia will try to put you in the home or something for us. She'll think you're going crazy. She'll put you with you and Karen.
Better turn Dixie off. I usually live in the car by the road. She come over to the house and put it upside up in, clean it up, had it do the grandbaby with her.
Oh, she did. That's Nope, we're in Luke tonight. Luke 7.
You never know.
Yeah. Wednesdays we're in Luke and Sundays we're in Samuel.
Who you know is a big family needs old van or
A minivan or like a full size? A minivan? Oh yeah, your van.
she told me that people
Let me think. I'm thinking, Bob. Who's got a big family? Amanda and Keith have a big family. Do they? They have, I don't think so. They've got like Keith's truck and Amanda's got, I don't know. I don't know, they have a big vehicle. I know. He said it drives real good.
It does. It's amazing.
Now this isn't the same golf cart van we used to take playing golf, is it? Same one. That thing was old back then. No, it was brown. Is this one brown or white?
It's green.
Green. No, it's green. That's it. It's green. That's the same one.
olive drink.
Yeah, olive. I think it was bright as green. That's right. All right, it's 10 after. Let's go ahead and get with it tonight. We are in Luke 7. I think we'll have time for two stories here. We've got Jesus healing the centurion slave, and then go into the city of Nain, and there's the widow woman that he meets on the road and raises her son from the dead there on the way. So those two stories, maybe we can both of them tonight. They're both really cool. I don't want to skip over them if we're going too fast. There's some really cool stuff in them. So Luke 7:1. This is this first story here. After he finished all of his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Geography lesson, right? It's on the northwest coast of the Sea of Galilee, a great big trading, fishing city. It's about 700 feet below sea level. I find that pretty weird. Big city is the seat of the capital, if you will, of the area. It's Jesus' home base, during his entire 3-year ministry that he's after this time. So Capernaum. We always associate it with Bethlehem and Nazareth, right? Those were very small, in the Bible stories, in the Gospels. It's really the city of Capernaum where most of the things that we know about Jesus happen here. So who also lives there? Who do we know lives in Capernaum? He's a fisherman. He's got a fishing business at Capernaum. Peter. Yes, Peter's house there. And many people will think either Jesus had his own house there, or he lived with Peter. Possibly he just lived in Peter's house. Don't know, but I don't know why. But it seems from what the research people do that he's lived there, and it's really cool to think that Jesus had his own house there. Anyway, to Capernaum.
I wonder why Capernaum's not still there. I wonder what happened to it.
I know.
It was a pretty big place.
It was a big major trade hub. Maybe because it was 700 feet below sea level. I really don't know. It's a good point though. So a centurion, he had a servant who was sick at the point of death, and he highly valued him. So a centurion, let's think about this. Explain to me who a centurion is. What do you know about centurions? Had 100 people under him. So is he Jewish? He's a Gentile. What's his nationality? He's Roman, a Roman Gentile. It's going to be important here in a second. These aren't just weird facts. A Roman, a Gentile. He had 100 people under him. He's probably like a non-commissioned officer today. A lot of people in the Roman army made it to centurion. That's as far as they went, right? You could make it there. Once you serve 25 years, you can earn your Roman citizenship. They're very, very well off. He has slaves and servants. He has a nice place. He's in charge, right? He's the main guy in the city. So in your mind, understand that he's a Gentile, he's a Roman, and he's probably a rich man. I mean, I'm not saying, billionaire rich, but, he's publican rich, right? He's one of the richer people in the city. So this is who Jesus is dealing with here. And I mention all that because these are three different thresholds that Jesus has to overcome, right? That he's willing to, he's not a Jew. And he's their sworn national enemy from a standpoint of being a Roman. He's occupying foreign force. And also, he's a very wealthy man, right? Jesus usually spends his time with the poor and the widow, and we expect him, right, to help poor people and prostitutes. But we see here that Jesus, at this point, is going out of his way to help this very rich Roman centurion. Okay? And the question is why? And it's not because of his faith. Jesus doesn't understand his faith afterwards. He's willing to do this without even knowing who he is. And so it kind of paints this picture for us, right? Jesus is willing to help everybody. He really, we often say that he ministers to the poor and the sick. But not necessarily, right? He doesn't necessarily prefer the poor. He's just as willing to help rich people too. They just don't usually want it. So here we go. And we'll come back more to that in a second. So the centurion, don't forget about him and his nationality and these three different socioeconomic lines that he's different than Jesus from. And what about this? He had this servant, the slave, who seeks to the point of death. Oftentimes we like to downplay slavery in the New Testament. Say, oh, no, it's not like slavery, that we're familiar with in America, right? That's just not true here, right? Understand, this man is not here at his own free will. This man has been conquered. This man has been gifted to him. This man is his slave, right? He's not entering into this arrangement because he wants to, right? To understand that, very much so, servant and slave in this situation is this centurion, rich man. He's got himself a slave, okay? And so it just kind of brings it out. Sometimes when we encounter slavery in the New Testament, it's just what we think. People being enslaved against their will, right? This is not some economic agreement that someone sells herself into slavery, and this is like not in this case. So you got this slave, and he's sick to the point of death. He's highly valued by the centurion. Verse 3. So the centurion heard about Jesus. He sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, he is worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation, and he is the one who has built us a synagogue. So here we have this picture of a really cool guy, right? There's a lot of irony here. We don't expect a Roman centurion, a slave owner, a rich man, to even like the Jews. But this man really likes the Jews and getting along with the Jews. He knows about the religion. He knows about Jesus. He sends elders of the people to Jesus, right? That he's built their synagogue. He's really assimilated himself into Capernaum, into this people. And it paints a picture. This is a man of really high character, right? That he's not a typical Roman soldier. And he has a slave that he cares about. Remember whenever we met John the Baptist? John some soldiers came to John and asked him, hey, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to bring forth fruits of repentance? And what did John say? Remember? Stop stealing from people. Stop abusing people, right? Stop using your authority and the sword to cause people to do what you want, which is very typical of most Roman centurions and soldiers during this time. So get this picture here that this man obviously is not like this. He's different. He loves the nation of Israel. He loves the slave. He loves the Jews. He even built them a synagogue. Again, it shows us that he's rich. So how is he going to build them a synagogue? He's got money, a lot of money, super rich guy. Verse 6. So Jesus went with them, with this group of people that come to meet him, right, on the way. And he went with them. And when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying, so the centurion sends a delegation of Jews to ask Jesus to come. When he hears that Jesus is close, he sends a second delegation of his friends out to meet Jesus and basically tell him, hey, don't come in. Right? In fact, we would never see this centurion talk. He doesn't speak to Jesus. He doesn't speak in the story. He's just talking about it. He says, Lord, don't trouble yourself. I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof.
Question then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why would he call him Lord? Why would the centurion call Jesus Lord?
Okay. Well, understand the word Lord is just a typical Greek greeting. It means sir. It doesn't carry any kind of theological of claiming him to be God. They use it all the time.
No authority, nothing above him. Not.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this is a very typical Greek word that they would use, of people of their authority. They might use this as their father, right? It is showing respect, but it doesn't mean he's claiming him to be God. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, John.
Isn't there another, like one time when he sees the capitalization, all caps of Lord or God? Is that?
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, and a lot of times, and this one has a lowercase in it, so it's just Adonai. It was just mean sir. That's it.
It'd be something like us saying Mr.
Yeah, yes sir, yes ma'am, Lord, and it can carry, confessing him as Lord God, Son of God theology, but doesn't have to, right? It's one of those words that doesn't necessarily the context. And this is a really good point to help us here. When you're coming across words in Scripture, right? Words in any language, the words don't carry the meaning. The word Lord has no intrinsic meaning of sir or ma'am or father. Understand what carries the meaning is the context. So the word Lord in this context means one thing. Another context means something else. If Jesus is saying it means something else, if Peter's confessing, he says Lord, it means something else, right? The word Lord doesn't carry the meaning. It's how it's used.
Showing respect.
Yes. And it's very much like the word elder. What's the word elder mean? Does it mean an office in the church or does it mean an old person? Same word. Exact same word. Depends on how it's being used. The word doesn't carry the meaning. Same as shepherd. Same word. Does it mean an office in the church, or does it mean a dude out in the field watching over sheep? Same word. So get that. And sometimes we get in trouble because we find a word that we like, and we understand how it is used in Galatians, and we want to transpose it and say, look, the same word is used here in Matthew. And they have to mean the same thing. No, they don't. Words don't carry the same meaning. Right? That's what we call a verbal fallacy. This is a really good point to just kind of see this. Just know that and don't make that mistake of plucking out a word of how Paul uses it in Romans and assuming it's used the exact same way by John in Revelation. Okay? You have to look at the context, ask the question, what's he mean by this? Okay, so here it's just a regular word. This is Lord, he's sir. Okay, so he's not confessing him as Lord. He's just saying, sir.
He's showing respect.
He's showing respect.
What the people said he's done.
And what he's doing, he said, I know that you're a man with great authority. Right? He said, I know that you are a man of great authority, just like I am. Right? So I know that you're a Lord of something. Verse 7. Therefore I did not presume to come to you. Right? Verse 6. Lord, don't trouble yourself. I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. I did not presume to come to you, but you just say the word and let my servant be healed. For I too, the centurion speaking, I too am a man set under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes. And to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. Right? I understand what it means to be a person with authority. When you give orders, they complete them. You and I are the same in that sense. Right? He's making the point. I understand all you have to do is say the word, and my servant is healed. Just say the word. You are confessing you have such authority over this. That's his faith there. Verse 9. When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at them. Turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith. And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant well. So before we leave that, what exactly is Jesus, what's he marveling at? Yeah, say his faith, but we need to be more specific than that.
That he had
How does this man demonstrate his faith? Go ahead.
That he had the authority to do that. That he had the power and authority from God to be able to do that.
Yes, but I guess my question is, let me just rephrase it, and maybe you're getting there, but what character traits did Jesus see in this centurion that he marveled at?
He was humble.
He was humble. Number one is his humility. And so we start to understand, right? Jesus talks about his faith. And from Jesus' standpoint, one way to understand faith is humility. Explain to me how humility can be an act of faith, or an understanding of faith can be humility. I mean, we don't always think about it that way. We don't equate faith with humility. But Jesus is here, right? He says, let me tell you about this man, his great faith. His humility. So how does humility become faith? What does this centurion recognize? Two things.
His trust. He doesn't deserve the servant to be healed.
Yeah, he's undeserved. He recognizes Jesus' position of authority, right? And his position here. He recognizes the disparity between who Jesus is and what he can do versus what he's capable of doing, right? And again, how's that a picture of faith? Does it not take great faith in us to understand who God is and what he can do and who we are and what we can't do? Right? This total dependence and trust on God, that he is willing and able to act on our behalf, and that I am unable to do these things, right? And this is the picture of faith. And then we start to understand what real faith is this confession of humility, of understanding my place in this pecking order, and understanding who God is and who I am, and this total dependence that I have on him. Really good picture here, right? That I know that God can do marvelous things that I have no ability to do, and so I just come to him and he's asking for it. Right? It's an act of faith. So one's faith, right? I mean, one picture of faith here is the centurion's humility. The other one is what? It's just basically what you would think as you read this. What else does the centurion, what does the centurion think about Jesus? Not only is he a man of authority, but he can do miracles. Right? This man can do miracles. He can walk on water. He can raise the dead. He can heal my slave who's about to die. Right? It's this confession. Right? So again, this is a matter of faith, of recognizing what Jesus can do.
We don't know how long he's been living there.
No?
The centurion, he's probably heard his whole life story, Christ's whole life story.
Oh, I would say there's no doubt. I would say that this centurion has been, yeah, he's been in Capernaum for a long time. Long enough to equate himself with the Jews, build them a synagogue, right? How long has Jesus been doing his ministry in Capernaum at this point? In Luke 7. How long was Jesus doing his ministry total?
Like
3 years.
Like 3 years. 3 years. The point Bill's making is, you think the centurion is well acquainted with Jesus? Yeah. And he even says that, right? When he hears that Jesus is in town, he sends for him. So it's pretty cool to understand, trying to kind of get this picture of these men living together. This very rich centurion, right, that loves the Jews. He's been following Jesus, hearing about Jesus, knows who Jesus is, knows he's a miracle worker. When he's got a sick slave, immediately his reaction is, hey, look at Jesus. So it's really cool just to kind of imagine this centurion being aware of who Jesus is and what he's been doing, and immediately sends for him. That's pretty cool.
He's not a Jew, so he don't have a Jewish background.
Not a Jew. That's right. Not a Jew.
He don't know who God is, basically.
Right. And from what we can tell, he's not a proselyte. He's not a God-fearer. He's not a Gentile that's converted to the Jewish religion. Not at all. He is a Roman pagan living in the city that just is fond of the Jews and people around him. Okay? They have different words for him if he's a proselyte or a God-fearer. They're not used here. And so that's going to be where we're going to head today. Questions, comments so far about this man's great faith?
I think it's kind of strange that the Jews like him, and he being a Roman centurion liking the Jews. I mean, usually that's bitter enemies.
Very, very strange.
And he was a good man, it sounds like.
Why do you, with pure speculation here, but the point is here. How is it possible this rich Roman pagan centurion has more faith in Jesus than all the Jews? Why do you think that? Why do you think it is? I mean, that's the irony that we're supposed to catch on, right? We're supposed to notice that. This is Jesus' point. I've not found such faith in all of Israel. How can he have such faith? Or how can the Jews have so little? Right? His own people have such little faith in it. This man has all this faith. What do you think the differences could be? John, yeah.
Well, like we were saying, the 3 years or so, less than that
It's okay.
we've been around hearing about Jesus, he doesn't have all these ties to being a Jew or all the history and all the teachings of that he's worried about.
Mm-hmm.
So he just sees Jesus for what he is. Jesus does miracles. Jesus talks about this is how you're supposed to live and how you're supposed to worship and all this stuff. So he sees it for what it is, whereas the Jews,
They come with baggage.
they come with baggage. They see Jesus as son of a carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
They see him as all these things and trying to pick it apart of who he's not.
Yeah.
And that just makes it hard for
Right,
them.
and even later, right, they think that he's Jeremiah come back, he's Elijah, he's Moses, he's somebody, he has none of that, right? And so I think what we're seeing here is that sometimes familiarity breeds contempt. I mean, that's not a good word, but right? The Jews are so familiar with their Jewish history and their prophets and these kind of things, and even with Jesus, that they just, right, they're not able to see Jesus with fresh eyes. And I think we see something very similar. People that have grown up in the church their entire life, how they view God and church and religion, versus maybe someone who's never heard of it, and they see it for the first time at age 20 or 30 years old. Like, wow. They just come to it and see it with fresh eyes, with no history, no baggage, no relationships, like a child. And they're just in awe. So, wow. He can raise people from the dead. He can walk on water. He can heal lepers. That's cool. I mean, we're not really think that's cool. That's just normal. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it. One of the reasons why he has such faith is that he's a step removed. He's not so familiar with who Jesus is. And we see it multiple times in history, right? And multiple times, even in the Bible, that these Gentiles have the ability to exercise so much more faith than the Jews do.
But it was common for them. The Jewish people were
That's right.
and could do whatever because they knew.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't know.
He didn't know.
He just believed.
That's right.
He just thought, I heard about him,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he can fix this.
I think you're right. I mean, and I think it's really cool here that Jesus is marveling at him. It's like, wow. That's really cool. Jesus doesn't do that very often. He doesn't stand in awe of people very often, but this is one of the ones. So now, how about this? This is pretty cool. Questions, comments about that? Not leaving the story. So let's talk about the clash of the two socioeconomic groups here, right? We have a poor Jewish carpenter, rabbi, religious person, coming into contact with a very rich, but not just rich, right? Very super wealthy. He built a synagogue. A super wealthy, pagan, Roman centurion slave owner. And so there's obviously total opposites of cultural lines here, right? The cultural lines here. And here's what we usually assume. Is that the superior cultured person has more to offer than the inferior cultured person. For example, if we go to a third world country, right? We are superior financially, we're superior technologically, we're superior culturally, we're superior, right, language-wise. We're superior in so many ways that the world would classify, right? That we're just a superior culture. Especially if you were to bring in maybe someone that's grown up in a war-torn region where all they've known is not just no technology and no education and no culture, but just heartache and war and trauma, right? And they're just so impoverished, and they come in contact with this super rich, wealthy Christian. We would assume, in that case, that the superior culture has so much to offer this impoverished person. Which is true. And most of them do. Except we have that exact same picture here, and what we have is the person with the superior culture. He's Roman. He's educated, right? In the Roman system. He is rich, right? He's superior than Jesus in every way when it comes to measuring by the world. But it's the poor Jewish rabbi that has something to offer this man. And of course the question here is maybe we kind of take a humble view a little bit and understand, yeah, we're superior in a lot of ways to a lot of people. But what do they have to offer us? What does inferior culture have to offer the superior culture? What do you think? Specifically here, when it comes to what is it that Jesus has, this centurion doesn't? And I mean, what is it that a poor, broken, homeless person has, perspective-wise, that you don't? What does he have to offer you?
Humbleness.
Yeah, humility. What else? Have you ever been hungry? Have you ever been that poor, without a home, without clothes? Have you ever, I said you, me too, have we ever, needed God as much as them? Do you think that we have ever cried out in prayer and helped to God like they have? Right, so again, right, even though that they are, say, culturally inferior, they have a whole lot to offer when it comes to perspective and relationship with God. When it comes to humility and what it really means to need, what it really means to have faith, what it really means to pray and beg God, right? And we can just go on and on with this, but I think part of the picture here is don't look down on other people. They have a whole lot to offer you, especially in terms of perspective and what they've been through and their experiences and how they relate to God and spiritual things and how they are much more thankful and grateful. They have so much to offer you. Yeah, they don't know what a telephone is, an iPhone is. They've never been to school a day in their life. They're uncultured and dirty. But they have a whole lot to offer that we often just look over. There's a really cool picture here that, and we can just go on and on with this, but don't miss that in the story. It's the clash of cultures, right? This Roman centurion really is presented as the upper echelon of society. And he's the one that is receiving from Jesus. Right? Questions, comments, any of that? Let's go.
A little off topic.
That's okay.
There's a commercial that I keep hearing on the radio, and it's like talking to organizations and corporations and saying, don't underestimate the un-college graduate people
Yeah.
for a job.
Right.
And it has a little scenario, I worked with my grandfather that's 72 for 12 years in a garbage truck and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, think about his dedication and his life experience
Yeah.
compared to somebody that just sat in a college classroom for 4 years.
Absolutely. Very good point. And then we did. We would, automatically dismiss the person and dropped out of high school and worked as a garbage truck person their entire life. We would just dismiss them out here and prefer, what they had to offer me.
A carpenter.
I mean, that's just this, and of course the point we started with here is this story is really about a picture of humility.
But that's kind of a
Yeah, it is.
clash of cultures.
It is a clash of cultures, absolutely. And it's a really good picture of humility here, right? It takes a lot of humility to see that, put yourself in their shoes and learn from them and lower yourself, even though that you're superior in all these other ways, lower yourself, and say, they have a lot to teach me. Value them. This is a person that's created in God's image, and they have a really cool perspective that I need. Absolutely. And then this person of character I don't see very often. Good point. Again, and Jesus sees this, right? This is why Jesus elevates this man. And the Holy Spirit elevates this man. And Luke elevates this man and says, hey, you guys in 2022, 23, right? Read this story. This story's in here for a reason. It's in here for you. Right? Don't miss it. Questions or comments? We'll move on to the next one. We got time. Cool. Okay. Verse 11. This is a little bit shorter. So soon after this event, Jesus went to a town called Nain. And his disciples went with him. And a great crowd went with them. So Jesus and his disciples and a great crowd, right, are walking around, and they go to this place called Nain. About 20 miles from about 20 miles from Capernaum. As he drew near to the gate of the town, behold, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother. She's a widow. And a considerable crowd from the town was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her. And he said, don't weep, and don't hear cry or weep or right. This is the Jewish wailing ritual, right? She is wailing. It's the beer, it's the lament, and the screaming, and woo! If you ever seen it, they just really get with it, right? Making a big commotion, super loud, screaming and wailing, and wearing sackcloth, and throwing up dust, and rolling around in the dirt, and they make a big deal about it, right? That's the picture there, right? This is what Jesus sees. That's the crying woman. She says, stop your wailing. And he came up and he touched the bier. And the bearer stood still. Some versions say coffin. Literally it's a piece of wood that you carry a dead body on. We might think it's a coffin. Literally it's just a plank of wood. I want you to get a picture here, right? He's not inside a coffin. It's a plank of wood you would carry dead bodies on. The Jews buried their dead very quickly. So as soon as they died, you wrap them in all the clothes. You put them on a wooden plank, right, between two soldiers. And basically it's a wooden plank that they're carrying this dead body on. And he comes up, let me just say this here, and he touches the bier. He touches the plank, the dead body. Why are we told that? Literally, he touches the coffin or the wood, not the dead body. Why are we told that? Well, it's not a sin. But you're right, it's a sin. But the better word is, it's not a sin, but what is it? Makes someone clean. Right? In contact with the dead body or the coffin or the bier or whatever. So Jesus could have done this without touching this. Okay, so the point is that he is willing to make himself ritually unclean, touches it, becomes unclean during this whole process. Don't miss that, right? So this woman's crying, please stop your wailing. He comes up, he touches the plank of wood, the bier. The bearer stands still. And he said, young man, I say to you, arise. The dead man sat up and began to speak. What do you think he said? I don't know, but I think it's cool. He sat up and started speaking right away. What happened? Where? I don't know. It's cool. And watch this. And Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, saying, a great prophet has arisen among us. God has visited his people. And this report about him spread through the whole Judea and the surrounding countryside. What do you know? I got some things to point out, but I want to steal your thunder. When you read that, what jumps out at you? Why is that? Why is this scripture here? What's it teaching you?
One thing that shows me there, or kind of bothers me there on that, is there's no faith shown there anywhere. None of those, not necessarily believe in Jesus, no faith there. He just does it like...
Yeah, he's not doing this because of their faith, right? And to be fair, he doesn't do the other because of their faith either. Both of these stories, Jesus acts out of kindness, just because, right? It's not like, I see these people's faith, and I'm doing this because they're faithful. Not at all. Good point. So why does Jesus, in this story, why does Jesus do this? Don't leave that yet. What's Jesus' motivation? It tells us. Compassion. Just compassion. Just compassion, right? That's what it says. He's walking, he hears it, he sees it. Knowing he sees this all the time. He's used to funeral processions. He's used to dead bodies. I don't know what's there on this one that other ones didn't. Why would he have more compassion here than just a regular, typical funeral procession? Well, because she's it's not just a dead, she's a widow. What's it mean for her to be a widow?
She's going to starve to death.
She's going to starve to death. She has nothing. It's a devastation. But understand, in this whole story, Jesus doesn't really care about the dead boy. That's not his point. He doesn't have, I'm sorry he died. I'm sorry you're sick. I'm sorry you died. He'll bring you back to life. His concern is not for the dead. Who's his concern for?
The widow.
For the mama. Because whenever he raises him from the dead, he gives him back to his mother. His total concern here is Jesus' heart for this widow. John.
Well, I was just going to say, reading it appears to almost be just circumstantial. Is he happens to that day, at that time, and then because of what's going on, and maybe how his mood was that day, just everything, he had compassion. If he had shown up an hour later walking, this story might not be there. It might be a different story, but
I think you're right. Are we to believe that Jesus raised every dead person that he came across, every funeral procession? No, right? He didn't. This is special. So you're right. There's something about Jesus that he does this one. This is the first widow that he's seen lose somebody. No, right? So you're right. There's something just this day he happens to heal this person. I don't know, because he's healing, right? Because he's just like us. Some days you feel more compassionate than others. Your stars align and things are just right. And 9 times out of 10 you pass home and don't give them $1. I don't either. But sometimes you feel bad for them when you give them money. Why did you do it that time, not the other ones? I don't know. No reason, right? And I think John's right. I don't think there's any reason behind this. This is just one of these days that Jesus heals this person. What do you think you can learn from this when it comes to, maybe I could use this story to help people at funerals today? Do you think it's important to God to console and comfort the ones that are crying or bereaved? And does he care much more about the living than he is the dead? So see, so many times we're more concerned, don't get me wrong, they say with the dead, but even before they die. We're more concerned with the person that's about to die, and they're in the hospital, and all of our attention, all of our prayers are for the person that is dying and the dead, and our concern and our focus on us, not always those that are bereaving around them. And I think I have a unique picture here, right? God's not so much concerned with the boy. It's the mom. Right? Maybe we shouldn't be so much concerned with the sick and the dying as we are with those that are left behind. Those that are going to have to deal with the consequences, right? And of course, it's obviously not just bereavement and funerals. It's divorce and orphans and plenty of people that are, devastated. And, God's heart is for them. Have compassion on them. I care about them. Question, comment, anything else?
That's the day after he healed rich man. Did his,
Yeah, so soon afterwards.
so he's just as important
Yeah.
as the rich man.
Yeah, you're right, right? Yes, really good. At one point, Jesus is ministering to this rich Roman centurion, and on the other hand, he's ministering to this widow that has nothing, the lowest of low in society, and give him nothing, right? And I think you're right. They're both pictures or stories are told back to back to show us, right? Jesus is not necessarily a minister for poor people. He's not. He's a minister for rich people just as much as he is poor people, right? It's not like he's a God for poor people more than he is rich people. John?
Well, it's here to go with that contrast. The centurion knew of him.
Yeah.
Asked about him.
Yeah.
This town, they were scared of him. They obviously, it's written as if they don't know who he is.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just this guy shows up and does this.
Yeah.
So you have, once again, an opposite of what he did for the centurion.
Yeah. No, good point, good point. And then, of course, all of this is, Luke and the Spirit include all this for what, right? To let me paint a picture of Jesus, which is painting a picture for God, right? I'm showing you the heart of God in this narrative, in these stories, right? These stories are specifically chosen and organized and written and included in canon, because they, in the best way possible, illustrate the heart of God, who he is.
I wish Luke would have told us more about who he was and what happened to him after he
Ah.
That's amazing that somebody comes alive and then it's what he did after that and what people would think of him. This man was dead, now he's alive. He could have made like he was a god or like something coming back from the dead.
Yeah.
But we don't hear more about him.
We don't. And I think it's really cool that you're right. We have very few facts and very little material about these stories. And also, I think it's good to point out, we also have very few of Jesus' recorded interactions with stories. In fact, what does the last book of John tell us? I'm writing this gospel to you so you'll believe. But then he goes on to say what? If I were to write down everything that Jesus did, what does it say? The world couldn't hold books. And so, yeah, you're right. This is just one teeny tiny minutia, small details of one story. This is Jesus' typical day, right? So much more could be written. It's not like he just did a few miracles, right? He's doing this all the time, everywhere he goes. That's the picture of John paints for us. Yeah. Okay.
The last sentence.
Yeah, go ahead.
Says, and God has visited his people.
Okay. What do you have read about
It says
that?
about it. Jesus, they recognized enough. When you heal that boy, they just come to the realization that the other guy did. Only they knew it was God, because they've been learning about God their whole life.
Okay, you're exactly right. And I thought you were going somewhere else, but I'm glad you brought that up. Whenever you read that word, God visited his people. Obviously, they're quoting an Old Testament there, but we have this picture. What does it mean, God visited his people? Where else do we see this word visited? Especially in the context of widows and orphans. James chapter 1. Pure and undefiled religion is this. What? To visit the widows and orphans in their afflictions, right? People say, there's that word again. And we often see that because we don't even know what that means, right? We see it in James, we see it here, it's an Old Testament quote. In our mind, you just go visit them. It's a picture. So does Jesus just show up and say hi? What's it mean to visit the widows and orphans? What's Jesus really doing here? We often define he's taking care of them. Right? He's not just saying hello. He is a man of action. He is doing something for them. So pure and undefiled religion is not going door knocking to visit widows and orphans and saying, hey, how you doing? It is taking care of them in their time of need, being their protector and their provider because nobody else will or can. Stepping into that gap, right? Being a father to them. Both of them need a father or a man there is the picture. To provide and protect because they don't have that. And of course, this is James' point. This is pure and undefiled religion. Is that you take care of and pay for and protect and bring it to your home, right? Who? people that can't do it. The widow in Jesus' day is the widows and orphans. Yeah. What else? I think it's so cool, verse 15, that he said he set up and Jesus gave him to his mother. I already mentioned that once, but it's in there twice. That he gave him to his mother. And then what about this? What do you learn? Because we didn't talk about it at the time. Why do you think Jesus touches the beer? Touches the plank, the coffin? Why does he touch it and make himself unclean? And he's there for a reason. He does it on purpose. He doesn't have to, and it's recorded for us.
Well, it's not chance. Somebody can't say it's chance. He actually did something visibly. Everybody can see that you're not supposed to do.
That.
And then it happens. Not him just saying something and then it happens.
True.
It kind of makes it to where it's more of, it's because of him, not just chance.
And two things. But what does it teach us about Jesus that he's willing to make himself unclean in this situation? He's willing to get dirty, right, in a sense. He's willing to be uncomfortable. He's willing, right? He doesn't just do as little as possible, right? He fully engages this woman and the dead people, right? Hugs them, embraces them. He's making the point, right? He fully engages with them, and it costs him. Not much, but it costs him his time and his energy, and now he's unclean. He can't do what he has to. He has to go through the whole process of being ceremonially clean again, right? It's very inconvenient. And sometimes I feel that at funerals. Funerals are very inconvenient. True? Now, we say it that way when we ought not. I mean, it really costs us nothing. It costs you time. It's your PTO. Really, it's pretty stupid to say I can't do it and give some excuse. But it really costs you nothing. Because, truth be told, it's just really inconvenient to us. You got to take off work. You got to get up for Saturday, whatever it is. You got to go over there, and you got to spend time. And then if you just visit, maybe you stay for the funeral. That's just really inconvenient. And then you go to the graveside. That's really inconvenient. And it is, right? Now think about this: that so many times inconvenience becomes our excuse for not engaging with the bereaved. And Jesus is like, hey, take time and have a heart for these people and get dirty and do whatever you have to and be as inconvenienced as you need to, because this is what they need you. Let me ask you, have you never like skipped the funeral? Or like just only done as little as possible and shown up and referred to as little as possible? You have. Because I've been to more than y'all, and I ain't all been there at all of them. Right? And then, do you feel guilty? And again, it's not a picture of judgment here. It's not it, right? It's more, hey, one of the things I see here, Jesus will go to the funerals. And it's very inconvenient for him. And he does it anyway. Because truly it's a small price to pay, right? It's a small price to pay that Jesus becomes unclean, and he has to go through the ritual ceremony, become clean again. Not that big a deal. Minor inconvenience compared to what he's offering and what he's giving to these people. Yeah.
Uncleanliness then was not a sin.
No, it's not a sin. Not a sin at all. It's just inconvenient, right? I can't do certain things while I'm unclean. I have to wait, and I got to do this process, and depends on what I have to do. I got to go to the temple, and I have to do these washings, or it all depends. It's just inconvenience. Good point. But I think it's a really cool picture, right? Anytime you get to thinking about, the bereaved and funerals, it's a really good picture here. You just don't miss that. And Jesus becomes unclean for it. Anything else? Verse 16. Verse 16. Last thing, almost done. After they see this, right? Fear seized them, and they all glorified God. And I don't want to get too much into the definition of fear. We don't have a lot of time here. But, one of the ways that this, obviously it's one of these words that doesn't mean exactly what we think it means in the English, right? And it's a really good picture here. It's all. Right? It's all. I mean, sometimes it says respect. It's not respect. Right? This is a much better picture that they are in fear. Not fear of the lot, but they are in awe. Because they have an eye-opening moment, an eye-opening situation where they understand, maybe for the first time, maybe for another time, who Jesus is and who God is, right? It's these awe-inspiring moments that we have sometimes. And they're far and few between. We're not always in awe of God, in awe of Scripture, in awe of Jesus. We're not in a constant state of awe. But sometimes we are, right? And here's the whole point, is that what this awe does is it produces worship. A really good picture of worship, too. And immediately we ask the question, why is it hard for us to worship sometimes? I mean, the really heartfelt, the emotional worship of being in the presence of God. Why is it difficult sometimes? Because you're not in awe. And the connection here is that when you're in awe, you worship. And of course, obviously, the lot of implications of that. This is what our worship service should be like. Our worship service should be a place where we come to worship God. Then how do we produce worship? How do we produce true hearts of worship in spirit and truth? You create awe in people. How do you do that? How do you create awe in people? You open up their eyes and you let them see God. You let them see the cross. It's not just information. It's not just a story. They learn something. It resonates. It connects. Right? It touches. It pricks. Whatever it is. Right? There's multiple forms of awe. If we can do that by a song or a prayer or a sermon, that in those instances of awe, it turns into worship.
This one says fear.
Yeah, exactly what it says. Fear sees them. And that word fear there, I think a good definition is awe. Right? They're standing in awe of God. And it happens to me sometimes. A lot of the times, it happens to me when I'm reading Scripture, the same story for the umpteenth time, and I learn something new that I've never seen before. I'm like, oh! Right? It's that click. I see it for the first time. I understand something about Jesus or God I've never seen before, right? It happened when I was studying this picture here, when I realized that Jesus is touching the coffin and he becomes unclean. Like, oh, that's cool. Right? It's just a little spark of awe because immediately my mind goes to taking care of the bereaved and funerals and what he would do and how I don't do that and how I'm just inconvenienced and the whole thing I was preaching earlier, right? And it's just one of the, in that moment, all those thoughts come to my mind. I'm like, oh, God, I wish I were more like you. And I know that I'm not when it comes to taking care of the bereaved and my attitude toward funerals. Right? But it's not just condemnation, judgment. I don't feel that. I feel, oh, look at my God. I'm going to be more like him. I'm going to go to funerals and stay longer and not be so, right? Not care so much about being inconvenienced for a little bit longer. Questions, comments, and we'll quit there. I just want you to see that connection between fear and awe and worship, right? And glorifying God. Because I think it's really important we see that. And that should be the goal when we come to Scripture and come to worship and stand in the presence of God, is to be awed so that we can glorify Him and worship Him. Okay, quit there. Pick up there next week. Yes, sir. A lot in that, isn't it?
He cares just so much about the riches.
He doesn't care just about the rich people. And rich people are just as good as poor people. This is a superior rich person with all this character and faith and, absolutely. People love him. And he loved his slaves. Slaves loved him. He's a really cool guy. Not all rich people. from, but this thing is a good law.
Doing a hand.
Oh, no,